Iran is on fire. For weeks now, the country has been absolutely gripped by the most intense protests the Islamic Republic has ever seen. So what's really going on? In this explainer, we're going to break it all down. What sparked this uprising, who is actually on the streets, how the regime is fighting back, and we'll ask that critical question: is this the start of a revolution?
To really understand what's happening, you have to start on the ground. In this quote from an eyewitness in Tehran, reported by the BBC, it just cuts through all the noise, doesn't it? This isn't just a protest. For so many people, it's become a battle for survival. The situation is desperate, and the stakes just could not be higher. And this is the human cost, captured in one single devastating number. The human rights activist news agency has verified over 495 protester deaths. That number anchors everything we're about to talk about in a really tragic reality. It's a stark reminder of the lives being lost in this conflict. All right, so first up, let's just try to grasp the sheer scale of this crackdown. The state's response has been so violent, it's turned city streets into scenes of just chaos and mourning, and it's plunged the entire nation into crisis. The numbers here really quantify the chaos. Beyond those hundreds of protesters killed, nearly 50 security personnel have also died. We're talking more than 10,000 people detained. Sources are describing hospitals as being completely overwhelmed. And get this, BBC Verify has confirmed footage that shows at least 180 body bags at just one morgue near Tehran. This is the brutal reality of the regime's response. So how did it get to this point? This wasn't just some random explosion of anger. The initial spark was something many Iranians know all too well: economic pain. But that spark very quickly ignited a fire that became something far, far more dangerous for the regime. And you can see that transformation happen so quickly right here. It all started with soaring inflation and a collapsing currency. But almost immediately, the protests pivoted. Chants about the economy were replaced with cries of death to the dictator. And that's the crucial point, right? This stopped being about policy and started being about the very legitimacy of the system of clerical rule itself, the system where religious leaders hold the ultimate power. And that brings us to maybe the most defining feature of this uprising: the protesters themselves. You know, these are not the same activists who led previous movements. As one expert put it, the young people on the streets today, they literally are Iran's future, and they are fighting for it. So what makes this generation so different? Well, first off, their age. Iranian sources are reporting the average age of those arrested is just 15 years old. The movement is also totally organic. There are no clear leaders. And crucially, it's secular. It's focused on universal rights, not religion. And right at the very heart of it all, women, demanding personal autonomy and just fundamental freedom. And this is their rallying cry: women, life, freedom. It's a slogan that really gained steam in earlier protests and has now come to encapsulate this entire movement. It's not about a single policy, it's about the fundamental right to exist freely. Now, when a regime is faced with this kind of existential threat, what does it do? Well, it falls back on what it knows: a tested playbook of fear. It's a dual strategy, and it's designed to crush dissent on the streets while at the same time hiding the evidence from the rest of the world. Let's see how that works. So let's break down that strategy. First, you have extreme violence. Security forces are using live rounds. The state has escalated the rhetoric, with the Attorney General calling protesters enemies of God, a charge that carries the death penalty. Second, you have total information control. Experts are calling this Iran's worst ever internet shutdown. It creates a digital blackout where state violence can happen in the dark. Now, this playbook isn't new, but what we're seeing is a terrifying escalation. You can see the pattern playing out right here. Back in 2019, the state first used this violence plus blackout playbook during fuel protests. Then, in 2022, the Woman Life Freedom movement challenged the regime's legitimacy like never before. And the current crisis? Well, it's the culmination of that pattern. The regime is combining those elements with even greater severity against a truly nationwide uprising. A crisis this big was never going to stay within Iran's borders. As the situation gets worse internally, it's spilling over, and it's drawing in global powers. What started as a domestic uprising has now turned into a really tense international standoff. And of course, this has ignited a war of words. On one side, you had the US voicing support for the protesters and openly considering very strong options, even military strikes. Meanwhile, Iran is firing back, blaming foreign enemies for the unrest, dismissing protesters as vandals, and threatening to retaliate if it's attacked. You can just feel how incredibly high the risk of a miscalculation is here. So all of this leads us to that final, crucial question. Are we actually witnessing a revolution? Let's take a look at the conditions needed for real systemic change. I mean, this is the core question that everyone is asking, right? Given the unique nature of these protesters, the unprecedented scale of the uprising, and the brutality of the crackdown, this whole moment just feels different. But is it different enough to topple a regime that's held power since 1979? If you look at the classic signs of a revolution, a lot of the boxes are getting checked. Protesters are challenging the system's legitimacy, the state is using its heaviest survival tools, and the crisis has gone global. But, and this is a huge but, there are major obstacles. The movement is still leaderless, without a clear political alternative. And the biggest question of all is whether the regime's powerful ideological security forces, especially the Revolutionary Guard, will stay united. Their cohesion is really the ultimate key. Look, the Islamic Republic has weathered massive protests before. They've crushed dissent to hold on to power. But the protesters on the streets today, they are the country's future. And that leaves us with the ultimate question. A regime might be able to defeat its enemies, but can it truly survive a war against its own children?